make sure the receiver's on. It's on? All right. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. You have somebody who's going to stop the stream? Shia. Yay.
Steal that from you in order to introduce the.
It broke.
It's like it's a good tale. All right, guys. Let's get this party started.
I'm going to put it in my pocket, I guess.
All right, guys. Plenty of seats. Really not, but enough. The whiteboard's gonna be there for a purpose. See, this is this. Oh, that's true. So you know,
If we need it, we'll roll it out.
So thank you everyone for coming. Morty Tyne is that he's honoring me to to do the introductions. I'm not sure why it's an honor, but yeah. Thanks for coming. We're gonna it's been how long since the last one? Not so long, which is good, and we're gonna try to make a habit of that. So, of course, as always, I started streaming. Yeah. If anyone has a talk idea, please reach out to us. And so, without any further ado, we're gonna learn about UI UX from the great Avi Schomburn, and we're very excited.
Take it away. Go. Sec. It's a little bit more easier over here. 1 second. Here we go. Hi, everybody. My name is Avi Schomburn. As the great Ellie has informed you, I'm a UI UX designer, a front-end developer, and I'm very excited to be giving this talk to you all. My name to Bootstrap is bad, except when it's good, because people often, everybody has some idea of, what to do, and you get the requirements from, the client or your boss, and then you just slap Bootstrap on it. And sometimes, that works, and very often it doesn't, and sometimes you end up with, people trying to find things, that's money for all the customer service reps, and customers trying to find stuff on your site. And I thought that getting some idea of the world of UI UX would help. I'm going to throw a lot of stuff on you, and my idea is not to intimidate you or make you feel like, oh my God, I'm not going to think of anything like this. It's really a feeling. It's really an intuition that I think that in some part can be learned. So I'm going to throw stuff at you, but my goal is that you should walk away with kind of a little bit of a feeling of what it's all about, and maybe 4 or 5 points you can walk away with. You'll already be ahead of the game. Just so that you understand that the way I see UI UX, there are really 2 points, 2 ideas that are the goals of UI UX, and that is to engage the user, number 1, and number 2, it's to ease their engagements. That's midam al regal shtayim, I guess. Engage the user. That means to get them in the door. That's usually more appropriate to marketing sites, but not necessarily. Ease their engagement is very applicable to both marketing and for let's say in-house apps, where like I said before, let's say your customer service reps are looking for something, they can't find it. You have to ease their engagement. So let's talk about some of the goals of this workshop. Again, We do goals. Ellie, this is for you. Not those type of goals, sorry. You watched that, it's an amazing shot, by the way. The goals, again, we talked about goals, that we're going to change the way you think of UI, UX. And just to understand, again, these are going to be a lot of points, but it all points to kind of those two ideas that we talked about. Let's talk about, of course, you're going to want to add some value. Thank you, Tony. We'll get to that in a second, very quickly. Just certain approaches. Actually, let's talk about this right now. UI and UX, most people mush them together. They are kind of mixed, but UI is a subset of UX. UI is the interface itself. UX is the full experience, but the experience can include something like customer service. There's a very famous meme that was going around saying the UI is the ultimate catch, the old Heinz bottle, and the UX is the new one. That's wrong because they're both UI. The UX was changed when they switched to the new ergonomic bottle with, when it's plastic instead of glass. So that's just an idea of the difference between UI and UX. UI is the bottle. Also, you got things like this. You have UI. Hey, that's great because people like cats, but the UX is not exactly that great. Okay. Content. We're going to talk about the content of this workshop. There are really I basically like to divide into three major components. Where are my 3 stages? There we go. Oh, before I do that, concept overlap. You're going to find that throughout the speech there are going to be a lot of concepts that are going to feel either very similar or come out to be the same. That is not your imagination. There are going to be a lot of concepts that are going to be similar or the same, depending on whether we speak about, even if we're speaking about just the interface or we're focusing on navigation. You're going to find a common thread through many of them. There are going to be 3 stages. I divided into 3 stages. Let's get the mouse out of there. Planning, organization, and design. Planning is, you're figuring out the goal. You're figuring out what features and functions you want, with your client, with your boss. I guess it didn't pick up on that. Whatever. Organization is the organization of the views in the apps. The views could be either views as in pages, or it could be a state. For example, if a button turns red, or if a better example is, if you change the content depending on on the user engagement. And last one is design. We will be talking. That's where the fun stuff is. The colors and spacing and all that kind of stuff. I don't think we're going to get to planning. We might, but we're going to run through it if we do. I don't think we're getting to it. I'm going to focus most of my time on organization. I feel that's the meat and potatoes. Design, we're not going to get to that, and of course I feel very bad about that. Okay, so let's talk about some global concepts. Is there any questions so far? What I talked about? That's kind of set up what we are going to speak about. Just to give you a taste on these concepts, again, I just want to go over this. It's very important. The goal of good UI, again, is to engage the users and to ease their engagement. So with that, we're going to divide it into more parts and just give some global ideas. First of all, we have to focus on the user requirements, and this is something I'm guilty of, and I'm sure you all are experts at this, focusing on what the user needs and not what you think the user needs, and not even what the boss thinks the user needs, and not even what the customer thinks the user needs. The idea is to understand from the user what the user needs, and if you're working for a huge company, that means you can do things like A/B testing. You can ask the users for some sort of feedback, like forums, and how are we doing? What can be made better? But the idea is that you have to focus on the user, and just keep that in mind, because you could slip, like, oh, this is a good way of doing it. Well, how do you know? Obviously, it's it's based on time constraints and things like that. This is very important. Everybody here can write very good code, very efficient code, but the problem is the user doesn't see that. The user just sees the UI, because that's what they engage with. And obviously, to a bigger scale, they feel the UX. If they can find a feel frustrator, they can feel great. The UI is the app, and you have to keep that in mind. Now, it can translate into your programming, but the UI is the app. There's another thing that I learned way back in the day when I was doing graphic design. You start with a blank slate. My father took me to a very big firm that was doing stuff for his company, and one of the graphic designers met with me, and they impressed on me something very important. I've seen it. I've heard about it, quite a few times. It's good to start with a blank slate. What that means is no preconceptions. Obviously, you have to have in your back of your mind the capabilities, what you're capable of, what the technology is capable of. But as much as possible, start with a blank slate, and this will allow you not to be constrained. See if I have that here. No. Not to be constrained by the technology or whatever. Instead of saying, well, this is what our technology can do, instead the question becomes, well, how can we make our technology do what needs to be done? And at least you go from there, even if you end up being constrained, but at least you started you started with that approach. This kind of is related. Paper and pencil before PC. This is another thing they taught me. And I think that was way back in the 90s, but I think it still holds true today. It's much easier to come up with ideas, come up with approaches, come up with solutions if you're scribbling on a pad as opposed to sitting at your computer. I guess it could include one of those big pads, that artists use, but I'm not sure how many of us have that. I'm sorry? But not even those. But you have the digital ones, But that idea that you start, freehand without being constrained by, anything that if you're drawing on, Photoshop or whatever it is, you start with paper and pencil. You do sketches together. You have to be an artist, obviously, just to get the ideas down. He's constrained. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the meat and potatoes organization, which is that middle step. Okay, key concepts of organization. Where are we? Here we go. Did I write them down? Yeah. Don't lose sight of your goal, which is kind of what we talked about. But sometimes, okay, so before I even get to this, I'm sorry, I'm going a little bit fast. Any questions on what I've been saying here before? Okay, so key concepts. Don't lose sight of your goal. Sometimes you can, yes.
You mentioned user requirements. Do you limit that custom user desires, or is that like keep them in the app?
That's a very good question, but it depends on your app. For example, if your goal is to have the customers buy something, then you not only want to keep them on the app, but you want to keep them on the correct path to be able to buy something. You don't want them going looking at your blog, unless there's another path that they're not decided yet, and you want them to go to the blog so that, so you see how things can diverge. But the idea is you want them to purchase something, so make sure they get to the buy button. That's basically what it is. However, it's sometimes every case could be different about what those user requirements are. The point is, as much as possible, try not to have preconceived notions. This is what I'm saying. Don't lose sight of your goal. Sometimes you can get bogged down in the technicalities. I'm guilty of this, right? I'm guilty of this, getting bogged down in certain technicalities which aren't necessarily important for what the app needs to be done. Sometimes it could be nice, but you can't lose. If we're starting to move out of customer requirements or out of certain things, it's just a nice thing to have. You don't want to lose sight of that goal. Sometimes you get off track, and then you don't deliver on time what's needed to be delivered. Okay, any questions on lose sight of your goal? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Signal versus noise. I couldn't find a better name for this. I found this, this terminology somewhere, and I could not figure out a better way to say it. Basically, imagine like a radio. You want to tune into your radio station, and you're trying to get there, and you have all this static. But then you slowly get to the station that you want to go to. So, do I write something here? Have the radio. Okay, so let's just take a look at this quickly. Here you have a lot of noise, even though each one of these apps can serve some sort of purpose. But let's say what the guy first comes to your app, all he wants is like a dashboard like that. All this extra stuff. Obviously these are a bunch of different apps, but in my race to find appropriate visuals, just imagine this is one big app. This is all noise. This is all noise around this thing. So imagine if I have. Let's just take a blog because it's easy. So if I have a blog and I decide to have blah, view, whatever. I have my title, and then I have a subtitle, and then I have any better markers? Oops. Whatever. A subtitle, a date. Can everybody see this? More or less? Not really? All right, we needed that. Oh well, worth a shot. Basically, imagine if you have you have here. Let's picture in our minds. You have the title, then you have you have a date, and then you have an author and a lot of different stuff, and everything's the same font size. I wish I could have the visual. And then you have the summary, and then you have the article, and then you have a bunch of tags, and everything's all the same. You start building up a lot of different stuff that you don't necessarily need. All the guy needs is just the title. For right now, when he goes to the article page, is the title and the article. He doesn't need necessarily the summary. He doesn't need the tags to be right in his face. So the idea is that you want to reduce those things. Now let's say that your customer says, well, I want those tags there. Okay, but remember that the main signal is the article. The tags can be smaller. They can be, lighter. They can be they're definitely going to be separate. That's reducing noise. So either an element does not need to be there, and don't put it there just because it looks good, or it might be useful. Maybe it doesn't need to be there because all it's going to do is detract from what the user wants. Or if it does need to be there, think about what's more important. And right there, the most important thing is the article, perhaps the title. Kind of a good example of this is YouTube. What YouTube loads first very often is the video itself. You notice that they load the video first, and everything else is kind of loaded afterwards. That's kind of like a time-based reduction of noise, that I'm not inundate you with all the peripherals, all the stuff, all the suggested videos. We want you to have your video. This is what's first. This is what's going to be front and center. And you notice it takes a very prominent place in the screen. So the person's focused. He's engaged in the video, and then everything else can load. Intuitiveness. Any questions, signal versus noise? It's not such a clear-cut idea. Everybody got that? Good. Okay. Intuitiveness. Now, intuitiveness, everyone says, well, what do you mean intuitiveness? How do I know what my customers will get them just to hop from one thing to another? Okay, how do you make something intuitive? The first thing you have to know is that intuitiveness relies heavily on single trial learning. Just because something needs to be intuitive doesn't mean that they can't learn right now what needs to be. If you have a site and you have a lot of different apps, and you see this very often, they have these little things that hop you around the site that you basically just cancel out of anyway. But they hop you around the site telling you this does that and this does that, and oh, look at this new feature. People don't mind. You obviously give them an option to skip it, but people do not mind, if necessary, that at least one time I need to be taught certain things. So as long as it's very easy for them to learn the first time around, that's great. You're doing great. But what about everything else, right? What about how do they make it easy to learn? Well, that's where everything else comes into play. We have consistency. We have certain conventions people are used to, and we're going to talk about automatic grouping later. Consistency and conventions. Where are my things? Okay, let's do this. conventions, and consistency. I think that everybody here knows what these icons do, every single one of them. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. This has been around since like the 90s, and I think that who told me? Somebody just told me. Did you tell me? Someone just told me that oh no, you told me. You told me, and you'll tell me if I get it wrong. That somebody, what was it again? That somebody.
The kid told him, look, Dad, they 3D printed the save icon.
The save icon. They 3D printed the save icon, right? Instead of calling it the disk. But the idea is that you're using elements that people are used to. Not only that, you're using placement that people are used to. They know that the menu will be somewhere on top. You know, there's a discussion on the Slack a few months ago, I think, about whether it should be on the right or the left. I don't remember who asked that. But the point is, it's on the top. And it probably had a hamburger icon to go with it if it was tucked away. People are used to that now. And even if you kind of change the design, you kind of do something fancy with it, it's still a hamburger icon. So that's kind of consistency. And that's a convention. Consistency can be internal too. If I teach people that this is how things are done on my site, this is how titles look, this is how headers look, this is how form fields look, then don't change it on them unless there's a very good the very good reason to. Don't change it unless there's a very good reason to, and even then you're only changing it just enough. Again, you want to ease how do I put it again? You want to make it easy for them, ease their engagement. So if they have to start figuring things out, and even if it's just for a nanosecond, but that builds up over time, you want to make things as consistent as possible and play on their conventions. Where are we? Let's talk about automatic grouping. Do I have an example here? Automatic grouping. Let's do this. Automatic grouping means I don't have to tell them how things are grouped, and it could be the way things are grouped are subtle. Why do things have to be grouped? Because people naturally look for to categorize and to compartmentalize different parts. So I thought this blog was very bland, but at the same time that this kind of emphasizes my point. We have a very subtle gray background which groups everything together. But let's imagine it wasn't like this. Let's just imagine for a second, and in fact actually here it doesn't really look that much different from the white from the gray. Right away, you know where each article ends and which one begins, because things are grouped together. Now, again, we're not necessarily talking about design so much, but that idea in terms of structure, that we're going to put the title, then some meta information, and then a summary, and then a picture, right? We're going to structure it like that, and then there's going to be a certain amount of space, and then the same thing again. Automatically, without even thinking about it, people are going to start grouping things together. It'll make sense. Things will flow, and it'll ease their engagement. And then I have a sidebar. Everything fits to a certain. Everything is flush with a margin. Everything is aligned. So that kind of makes an imaginary line where I am putting everything. Now this is the sidebar area, and then I have my recent points, which within that component, I'm separating by space. Even though there's no dividing line. There's no, there's nothing to physically separate them. But just the space itself tells me, well, these are different posts. That's automatic grouping, and it can happen. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be out there. It could be. It's either. It could be use conventions to do it. You can have indicators like over here between the days and the days of the month. You have a line over there. So I think that's pretty straightforward. The thing that's not straightforward is and people can make mistakes about this, is that you can have unintended consequences where, let me try this again. Hopefully it'll behave just enough because I'm doing something a little bit bigger. Thought if I filled it in. All right. Put it on the next purchase order. Sometimes you can be working on something and things are mistakenly grouped together. because you weren't careful about the placement. I don't have an example here. I was going to draw an example. But the idea, just think about an idea where you can have, let's say, it's a bad example this is a bad example because everything's grouped together, and they try to make use of borders here, which doesn't work. Obviously, this is from like the Stone Ages, but you get the idea. If I, let's say, had this group over here was different from that group over there, well, how am I supposed to know they're two different groups? They're kind of, this is an extreme example, obviously, but they're all grouped. They all look grouped together, so you're going to create confusion for the user, and that creates friction. And now he has to think about it. He becomes frustrated. So it's important. The reason why automatic grouping is so important is because the reason why automatic grouping is so important is because of the mistakes that you can make. Okay. Moving right along. Let's talk a bit. I'm going to skip to content. Okay, fine. Navigate. We're going to talk about that soon. Here's another example where things are grouped together nicely. The Home Depot. You have, let's say they had to have all these elements. I know where my navigation is. Why? Because everything is grouped together by automatic grouping. I see this line of stuff here. I know, and then conventions. I know that navigation is usually on the top. So if I group a bunch of links together on the top, oh wait a minute, that's my navigation, and I know it's different from all this stuff over here because that's it's automatic grouping. I have the fact that it's in a row on top. I have my icons. Everybody knows what all these icons mean. I know that this Menchie means an account. So that's conventions. I also have something called hierarchy, which I'm going to talk about now. The main thing is to know where your card is. The second most important thing is to know how many items you have. So how did they do that? How did they show the hierarchy of what something of elements? The card is bold. That's not. I know that kind of bleeds more into design, which we're going to talk about. But here we have an idea of hierarchy that the important thing and the non-important. Obviously, the prototypical or common example of hierarchy is a blog post again where you have a title and then you have your article. The title is big, just like to get in the main point, and then the article is what you're reading. Okay, navigation structure. Just a few things to go into to answer when you're doing navigation structure. Where am I? How did I get here? What can I do here? And what can I go from here? I think this one is something that people miss. Everything else is, you guys understand that already. What can I do here? Sometimes people try to be fancy with their navigation, and then this gets lost. What can I do here? Because it's kind of vague. What you can do here, you kind of have a fancy name for whatever page you're on or whatever view you have. Also, you have to keep in mind navigation structure of local navigation and global navigation, and then local navigation, where within a component or within a view, I have to know where to go. So here's an example, again, Home Depot, of their navigations. Obviously, you start here. I'm not even going to try switching. You're going to start here. Obviously, all this is like the home page. This is a Mac, so I'm sorry, I'm not used. I was going to show you like live, but it's a Mac, and I'm not confident I can switch quickly. You have your main navigation over here, and then once you click on this, it goes to the next level. This hero menu is not even up yet. All these subcategories are here, and then when you click on this, then the hero menu comes up with whatever. Here's another example. So what's the difference between these two? What are these? Here's another example. The difference between Amazon and Home Depot is that Home is just two different types of structuring depth. So first of all, we have the local and global, where you have, you start at the most general idea, and then you drilled more specific and then more specific. And that's the same thing with Amazon. You're going with a whole list of everything, and then you're getting more specific and more specific. They're using a bunch of menus, and they're using a filter. So there's two different types to think about. What's going on here? The problem is that people don't like to see all this in the first shot, because if they do, then what's going to happen is they're going to start saying, what I need is definitely on this list. Instead of it, maybe it might be somewhere else. They're not going to think of the clulim. They're not going to think of the main categories. They're going to think of, I see a whole list of options here, and what's here had better be there. And let's say this list just included everything, right, as it does on Amazon, but we'll get to that. The problem is if you give a whole list of everything, if you just have, like, I remember they had these e-commerce shops which had a whole list of everything, and you had to look for your thing. You always had to look for your category that best fit. That's a problem. That creates friction. That people are going to sit there and looking. Instead, they start with clulim. You start with clulim, and then you just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 options, and then I drill down. It's much easier to find what you're looking for. And even here, you have headers. You start scanning for the headers instead of just a list of stuff. You start scanning for the headers. So again, we're going from the more general down to the more specific. Okay, that actually holds true also with interface design, which we talked about before. Again, the blog posts where you have your title, and then you have your article. So I have my title and article. I know where my title ends and my article starts. And of course, that's a very simple example, but you could apply it other places. Over here, this is a filter that's used. So I have a list of like everything, but I start filtering and filtering and filtering. Instead, people don't even look here right away, I imagine. People look here first to see where's my main category or department. I want to look at 4 stars. I want to look, for my brand. So people are constantly looking at the global and going further and further specific, and that eases the engagement much better. So let's say you have an in-house app. You don't start with you don't come there and you start with a bunch of, let's say, my customer data and my appointment list and my this and a whole slew of things. We'll have a menu, and then they'll go to the appropriate view. We'll have, let's say, a widget. Let's look at this like a dashboard. We'll have a widget, and then we'll drill. The widget will have the general information. And you want to see detail? Let's Google. Anybody's worked with Google Analytics? You want to see detail? Then you drill into the detail.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So go back to the detail page. So I guess the question is, strong as an example. So clearly it's a big assumption that this is a good example of.
It's the best example I could find with the time I had.
Of a good user experience.
I thought so, and again,
Okay, so
I'm not used to Macs, or I would show you live.
So here's my question. So if I was designing this page, I would make the argument that having data, that this is a terrible user experience because way too much information they overwhelm the user with, and potentially not showing all the individual things that there are, and just making nice pictures would be a much better user experience. Here's the biggest challenge. My question really is, how would you go about, if you were Home Depot, how would you go about figuring out what the best strategy and what the best approach is, and
Well, I'm sure they did a lot of A/B testing with, how, what users found easier. Your question, as I understand it, is this looks like a bunch. This looks like a lot of stuff. That's your question?
yeah, to me personally.
So that's exactly what I was talking about. If they just presented you with this page, that would be terrible. That would be terrible UI and and therefore a terrible user experience. You're right. The thing is that, and I'm going to try. Originally, when I did graphic design way back in the day, I asked my teacher, like Mac or PC, and they're like, "This just go with PC. It's cheaper." They're almost equal. All right. Well, here I am. Anyway, So the thing is, you have to keep the whole entire experience in mind. So again, when you come to this page, you're not seeing all of this. You're seeing just this row. Okay? So this is much easier to digest. All you're seeing is this row, and this is my navigation. I click on this, it's kind of like I put this in my cache. I don't even need to, I'm in home. I don't even need to think about the fact that I'm in home and decor, because it's already in my subconscious. I already know that I'm there. But it's kind of helped by the fact that there's an orange line and it's bold. Okay, that's more of a design choice. Now I have a choice of this. I'm only focused on this. Okay, so I don't have a lot of friction, cognitive friction, because I just had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 categories to think about. And since you can't do that forever, so they said at this point, they felt it was just a better idea just to have, at this point, have a hero menu with, but we still need to help you along. We still need to reduce your cognitive friction by putting headers. So I would argue that, again, this is also kind of illustrates the idea of user experience and user interface. This is an interface, right? These are kind of 3 different stages of interface. But as an experience, it works, because in an experience, I'm kind of caching the home decor, then the home decor, furniture, and kitchenware. Then when I choose that, I'm gonna choose from here and choose home decor. That caches in my mind. And then when I find artificial greenery, I don't need to worry about all of this. This also goes into how automatic grouping, where everything is grouped. I don't need to think about area rugs because I'm focused on artificial greenery. So everything is, so in my mind, I don't even have to group things together because it's grouped for me. I'm only focused on my artificial greenery. Now I only have a list of 1, 2, 3, 7 or 8 items to choose from that I can digest. So I would argue that this particular user interface is a nightmare, but because of the experience as a whole, I think they did a pretty good job with what they had to deal with. I have till 9 o'clock? Okay. Can I get like 2 more minutes for buy a vowel or something? Okay.
Well, also, wouldn't
Yeah.
it be better to work the other way around? Figure out what the person needs instead of having them get them. In other words, let's say, for example, here I asked you a question, which room is this for?
Which
room is this for?
right?
That would narrow down this whole thing you're looking at here, from luggage
Mm-hmm.
to what's it called, like mirrors. I mean,
So that's a good idea. That's again where
you're making the user like walk this whole long thing instead of trying to
Mhm.
be a little bit intuitive about
well,
it.
even when you go into the room, let's say I need to fit this office. There are a lot of things in this office. There's a whiteboard, there's a stand, there's a table, there's farm, there's a door.
So there may be a way to.
I'm just saying you're not you're right, but it depends on your goal. Then we're going back to our goal, and more importantly, who our user is and how they work. So that's why you have people, hopefully you're funded for this, but you have to do your research and see what your users, what their approach is, how they work, how they swing, how they, do their thing. I guess Home Depot, through all the testing, said, look, who's coming to our store? People who think they know what they're doing, mostly. So basically the common Joe.
Well, they are offering that. That's the search.
Right.
I would wonder if the search is the main used thing.
It is. Look, it's the first
It
thing
probably
you see.
is.
Yeah, this is the first thing you see. Then this is just categories. But like you're saying, it's 2 different interfaces.
For 2 different types of people.
Yeah.
But not only that, but you brought a good point that what's more prominent, this or that? Again, this
Comes to the page. The top one's open. The bottom one's not. You don't just come to the page with all that open.
Well, my point is, there's something you brought up, that this goes into hierarchy. What's more prominent, this or that? So the search is bigger because people don't even bother with this. They're just going to search. In my office where they're working, they opted for filters on the tables because they would just rather search for the number instead of having to scroll through it or do some sort of menu. See the time? Okay, this is also a filter, whatever. So I just want to touch very quickly on information structure, since we covered a lot of what it talks about. Information structure is how to structure information itself. Here's Home Depot again. I was in a rush. So you have your infrastructure. I kept on bringing in the the blog article, but that really is more of an information structure, because really all it is, unless you're like one of these very fancy schmancy ones that have all these design elements, an artist blog, you're going to have it's all information. So how am I presenting information? Well, it's not again, we're not really touching on design. I'm trying not to. But here we have a list. They decided people like for just the points of this product, whatever it is, this drill, they want a bullet list. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Is a table good for this? No, because it provides 600 RPM. No, that wasn't good. That was too much. So we're just going to do a list. It goes into prominence. A lot of things you'll see here. This is prominent. People want to know the price right off the cuff. However, you don't want to put the price right up here because you want to promote all your stuff first. So, we'll make it big so they can find it, but first they have to wade through all this. Okay, and yet we still make it easy to wade through. Excuse me. How am I going to show how popular it is? Well, this is information structure. Also, I'm going to use a representation, icons instead. Here's another way to show information structure, where I have kind of a table, but even within the table, it's just kind of automatic grouping. And I'm sorry, it's blurry, but they had the price and I think the day, and then what the withdrawal was or whatever it is, and something else I can't read. But the idea is I have this kind of a structure within a structure, and then of course I have two prominent things that people want to see: the expenses and the income. Here's another thing, a blog post, but this is more of an admin where I have how much, I guess this is how much the blogs are making revenue or something like that. But I guess on ad revenue or something. But the point is, when the guy comes to his admin, he wants to see how much money he's making. Otherwise he's not writing for nothing. But so we have our information is nice and prominent. Again, like I said before, a lot of the concepts are going to be repeating themselves. They're just being applied to different parts of the structure. I just want to touch really quickly on wireframing. Are there any questions, even if something that I didn't explain properly? Yes.
Are we going to get back to the title of the presentation? Because I'm not connecting the title.
So the title is, the title, the thing about the title, I'm sorry if it was vague, but the idea is that, again, as I said in the beginning, and I wasn't clear then either, people sometimes are prone to just start the project and slap Bootstrap, and they use a lot of libraries like Bootstrap, material, things like that. Is Shia here? Shia's not here.
When you use those things, as long as you do the right
Shia?
part,
I want to see how long you squirm before I mention ad design. Yeah, sorry?
there's nothing wrong with using Bootstrap.
Nothing wrong with, there's not, no,
Have
that's
topography,
except when
there's
it's good. That's why I choose an except when it's good. The idea is that, use Bootstrap in a way that promotes users' ease of use. I'm not saying don't use Bootstrap. I'm saying don't just slap Bootstrap on and call it a day. That's what I'm saying. Is that understandable? Bootstrap is a component library.
If you're taking utility one, there's topographies, H1s to H6s. You can theme them. You can have
Right,
also in your theme you can
Right.
add classics down,
right.
different levels.
Where do you use H6s? When do you use them? Why do you use them? That's what I'm saying. Just approach it with some chachma. Approach it with a strategy. Right. Right. That's although that's even an SEO problem, because for screen readers and a lot of other screen readers and just Google search will slam you if you use a bunch of H1s. But aside from that, you're right. The people just use H1 tags. They use it inappropriately. But that's not even what I'm getting into here. What I'm getting to is you want to have your H1 tag for what? What do you want to have it for? Let's just say you just keep with it, not because it's bigger. You just stay with it because it's big, but you make the wrong thing large, and the customers are like, I didn't ask for this, or it's confusing them. Sometimes they don't even know. See, this is what I'm getting back to, this kind of a planning thing. People don't even know what they want. It's not even the users know what they want. It's a matter of getting the users to do what you want them to do, or getting them the value that they want, successfully, not even what they need, not even what, what even they think they need. Do I have like 2 more minutes?
Yeah, wireframe.
No wireframe? Do quick. I can stay here afterwards. I'm going to just do very quickly. Okay, I'm going to just run through this quickly. The idea I'm saying here is basically no visual styles. When you're doing wireframe, don't even worry about styling. Do high to low level. That means that you are going to do a wireframe for the high level. Here are my views. My views. We're going to have this view. We're going to have the money view, and then the article view, and then this view, and then do kind of like a if you want, you could do a relationship. When he clicks here, it goes to this. You have one of those interactive ones. High to low level, rapid. Wireframes are meant to be fast. They're not meant to sit there and think about it. Rapid, and even do a multiple of the same one, because you're going to find good ideas in one and bad ideas in the other. Multiple, we said. Iterative, we don't like it, so then flip it out. Don't be afraid that you're not going to get it right the first time. Why? This is where your ideas. This is the brainstorming session. Rapid fire. I'm going to skip that.
Tommy does the exact opposite of everything you said. Not that they're doing a good job.
So do I. By the way, so do I, because of time constraints and whatnot. But
No. When those goals he said, the key points, they do the exact opposite of everything. I'm not saying it's a good thing they're doing, but
Bootstrap, why you should do that? Because the opposites are all more concrete. It's more concrete.
no, they do that.
meaning what?
When you do the opposite of this,
Right.
it's more concrete.
It's more concrete, but for example, you might find problems with your design if you're just scratching quote unquote on the back of a napkin. You're saying, oh, wait a minute, the user's not going to get confused. You have a 5-step process with 5 wireframes over here of different views, and they'll be like, oh, wait a minute, they're going to get stuck here. As opposed to you spend time on it, and you miss it because you're too focused on that.
Would you say,
I'm guilty too, but
would that go back also to like first focus on the UX and then just as an afterthought do the UI?
ideally, not necessarily the UI. The idea is to what your customers, to get your customers the value that they want, right? So to say the first focus on UX, yes, but sometimes the only thing they need is the UI.
Like something
If I have a blog,
UI so much that we don't get to this point of UX, right?
that's also important. Let's say it's a whole company. So part of your UX is your customer service representatives. If they're going to call and your customer service rep says jerk, well, that's part of the UX. I mean, we're in 2021, and I tell some people that a website is no longer like, oh, cool, you have a website. It's part of your marketing strategy. It's part of your face of your business. So the UX is widespread. It might be out of your scope, right? You talk to the customer service head, and he'll tell them, look, this guy's a jerk. He's not coming back to our website. So yes, the idea is there has to be some sort, there has to be some sort of picture of the UX, but a lot of that might be out of your scope, and a lot of that might be in scope. You might say, look, I don't want this whole big app. That's it. Anything else just to end up? We're not going to touch on that. And that's about it. All right. That's all I have time for. If any questions,